This is, to be honest, this is the first time I'm taking part in this kind of venue.
Don't worry. I'm sure there are many in the same situation as you, so please don't worry about it.
Shaz? If you just yeah, Shaz, we're not getting the sound across. Shaz, sorry, the sound's not coming across, so you need to sort that out. Okay, very quickly then, Shabir Hussain, if you want to introduce.
Yeah, my name is Shabir Hussain. I'm from Aisha Mosque and Islamic Centre in Warsaw.
We know that particular mosque extremely well, so lovely to see you again, Shabir. Lovely.
Arif mentioned that he's been in close contact with you, Andy.
Oh, Arif is my right-hand man. He's passionate about his community, and he's always given me a fantastic welcome at the mosque. Well, everyone has given me a fantastic welcome at the mosque.
Fantastic. Okay, where are we then? Hamda, you can introduce yourself.
Afternoon, Andy. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Hamda. I am representing MABI, which stands for the Muslim Association of Britain Youth Department. So it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the conversation with you. Thank you.
Akhi Mohammed Ghalib, if you want to introduce yourself and your organization.
Assalamu alaikum. Mohammed Hanif. Hi, Andy. I'm the chair of Al Hijra Trust and Al Hijra Mosque.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to hear you. Yeah.
And Akhi Mohammed Ghalib, if you want to unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you listening?
Yeah.
Are you? Yes. My name is Mohammed Ghalib, and I am from Birmingham Hall Green, member of the Conservative Party.
Good one. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Lovely to hear those words. Member of the Hall Green Conservative Party. Lovely.
Sulaiman.
We are waiting for you in Hall Green.
Thank you very much.
Sulaiman, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
My name is Mohammed Sulaiman. I live here in Spark Hill, and also I'm representing a mosque around here in Spark Hill called Pagham Islam.
I haven't visited your mosque, to my shame, but I know exactly where it is. So yes, so my apologies to you.
You will be welcome whenever you want to come.
Well, we must talk about programs and visits because it's been a bit random, but we'll come to that.
Dr. Saad, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Saad. I'm representing MAB, and I live in Stetchford.
Stetchford, lovely. Thank you very much.
Ghulam Dita, you want to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Hello, my name is Ghulam Dita, and I'm a community activist from Walsall South, and I've worked with MEND in the past, specifically around sort of Muslim participation and reporting Islamophobia.
MashaAllah. We've still got a few more people to join us, Andy, but I think we'd make a start.
Yes, we've met lots of people on the line, so that's great.
They'll be joined as we come along. So, Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Everybody, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for joining us for this rescheduled meeting with Andy, the Mayor of the West Midlands Combined Authority. Again, Andy, thank you very much for taking your time out to rejoin us again. And no doubt the first one or even the second one perhaps would be equally productive in our discussions. So firstly, with regards to the meeting, basically there's been a discussion with a number of key Muslim organisations up and down across West Midlands to highlight the key issues and concerns being faced by the Muslim community, and also then to hear from Andy with regards to his future plan with regards to the policies and plans and the practices he'll put in place to look at addressing some of those concerns and issues that I'm sure Andy is very well aware of. As you all know, the Muslim community here in the West Midlands, we represent almost around 10%, which is almost double the national average. So that's a very sizable number of Muslims that we have here in the West Midlands. And, you know, and again, Andy, as you can see from the diversity of the people that have joined us today. It's not just one ethnic group. So there's Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Somali, European, Arab, Indian, and so forth. So the Muslim community do represent a diverse ethnic community background in West Midlands, and also across the whole of West Midlands. All the 7 towns and cities of West Midlands are covered by the organisation that we've been working with. And you know, as the mayor of West Midlands, Andy has a very important portfolio, which he'll no doubt tell you about in terms of transport, housing, unemployment, looking at inward investment, community cohesion, and so forth. And these are all important matters to everybody, including the Muslim community. And we have a number of questions that individuals have written in, and we just slightly refined them so that they're all in a standard template, Andy. But these are all individual questions that those members that we've been working with have identified that they'd like to pose to you and hear from you. So without further ado, like I said, there's about 30 organizations. Perhaps I'll just quickly mention some of the other ones that haven't been mentioned. So we've got Manara Foundation, Ar-Rahma Islamic Center, Green Lane Mosque, Birmingham ISOC, Coventry ISOC, Bangladeshi Caterers Association, Cockney Masjid, Muslim Student House, Midland Muslim Society, Birmingham Masjid and Dawah Center, Masjid Noor, Lozelle Islamic Center, Darlaston Mosque. So we've got a varied Muslim organization, mosque, and community centers and businesses across West Midlands who have been involved with us in discussion with regards to how they foresee a future with yourself as the mayor of West Midlands, and what it is that you can actually deliver for the community, and in particular for the Muslim community. Okay, so time is of the essence. What I'm going to now do is we're going to be finishing by 5 o'clock, so this is just an hour slot, and we've already allocated the questions to individuals for them to ask. So as I call out their names, they'll be asking you those questions. So firstly, Andy, you've got about 10 minutes just to introduce yourself, what you've done so far as the mayor of West Midlands, and your plans for the future, and anything else that you want to say, including the technical blip that you had at the last meeting. Over to you, Andy.
Yes, you're quite right, Nosmore. We're going to start there, actually, because first thing I want to do is, of course, apologise to everyone who was on the call waiting for me. I think it was Tuesday evening. I do not know why. It's the first time it's happened since the beginning of lockdown. I tried to come onto the Zoom call and I was just repelled by a number of links that Nosmore sent me. So I really don't know, but genuinely, I'm really sorry if I wasted your time, but very appreciative of you rescheduling so soon. So delighted that we can be together. And I'm very conscious it's a Friday, so even more important that you've been able to find time. So thank you very much indeed. I thought what I would do in terms of explaining the situation, I'm going to talk about my role generally, first of all, not talking about any specific community at this stage. And then I know we'll get to questions that are directly relevant to your community, but I thought it was absolutely right. I did the big picture of what's this job all about, really, at the start, if that makes sense. A bit about what we've achieved, and then a bit about what I'm committed to. But then I'm very much looking forward to getting down to the specifics for the Muslim community as we move through the hour, basically. So the big picture is, of course, that I'm not a politician by breeding, you might say, in that for 30 years, I worked for business. I worked for journalists and was their CEO for the last 10 years. So I only came to politics relatively late in life. But the reason I walked away from my job 5 years ago now to stand in the first mayoral election was that I genuinely believed that the West Midlands could do better, and better opportunities would be delivered for all of its communities. And actually, one of the things I find so exciting about leading the West Midlands is the mix of communities that we have here, whether that be by faith, ethnicity, as you've already drawn out, Noswell, there's much overlap there. And if we can get this right in the West Midlands, it is, in a sense, a blueprint for the rest of the country, actually. And in terms of the last 4 years, I was lucky enough to win the first mayoral election just by the tiniest of majorities, and we're expecting this next one to be very close as well. The core part of the job is obviously to drive the economy of the region and the things that actually contribute to that. So particularly around transport, around housing, and around skill development. And if I'm entirely honest with you, the first 3 years of the mayoralty before the pandemic we were doing pretty well. And people were saying the West Midlands was in good form. Our economy was growing faster than anywhere else. And in those first 3 years, actually, we'd increased the number of jobs here by 97,000. And that was in pretty much all areas of the conurbation, actually. And I was really pleased that some of the areas that perhaps had been more held back historically, like Sandwell, for example, was more than having their fair share of new jobs going forward. We've seen as well rapid investment in our transport system. Just one statistic, we're now investing 7 times what we were before I was mayor, and that's seen the extension of the metro, railway lines being reopened, for example, the Moseley-Kings Heath line, the Walsall-Wolverhampton line, as our friends from Aisha will probably know. We've seen good work on our bus services, fares frozen for 4 years, and that really, really matters to people on low income who find it hard to travel around the region. And if you think of housing, we'd actually doubled the number of homes being built across the region over the last 5 or 6 years, including doubling the number of affordable homes. That's so important, up to about 5,000 a year in the numbers to 2020. And really encouraging, we were doing lots of work to improve the skills and qualifications of people. And actually, we got to the point in 2019 where the first time ever, over half of our workforce was qualified at what we call level 3. So a good standard of qualification. Because I'm a huge believer, and I would say that your community embodies this actually, a huge believer that if you get those qualifications, you will actually carry on to have a great fulfilled career. So we were making really encouraging progress. The truth though is that the pandemic has come and it's hit us for 6. And your community has taken a disproportionate part of that hit. I'm acutely aware of that, and I'm sure we'll come to this health inequality issue. But even in total, what it means is we've got to really work hard to build back from the hit that we've taken. So some of the commitments that I have given over the, in terms of what we're going to do going forward, the most important one, we talked about 100,000 new jobs in just 2 years. Now that would be the fastest growth we've ever seen in the region. And I'm so aware of it because young people, women, ethnic minorities have been particularly hit by the pandemic in terms of job losses. So we need to quickly rebuild those jobs, get people retrained in the growing areas. We've talked about further progress on our transport system, committed to double the investment again, and that does mean further new metro routes, for example, along the Hagley Road and indeed out through East Birmingham, out to the airport and the NEC. And it also, of course, means getting on with further station openings. We've got proposals in Wolverhampton, in Coventry, further in Walsall, and indeed the whole of the Sutton Park line there as well. We're continuing our commitment to building new homes, but on brownfield sites, protecting our green spaces anywhere in the conurbation, whether it's on the green belt around the edge of the conurbation, or just smaller parks and greenlands, because we've learned in the pandemic just how important that is. And our new developments, we want to see green space within them as well. We're committed to tackling climate change and the new jobs that come from climate change. So for example, we've talked about our automotive industry, moving to electrified industry, building of batteries here, about 4,000 jobs in that battery factory we are planning here. And we've talked also about backing our high streets, our town centres and our city centres. The combined authority that I lead has put lots of cash aside for that in Coventry and Dudley and in some of our smaller centres like Kingshurst, like Chelmsley. So plans there. And we want to see that that very, very local renaissance on the back of the pandemic as well. But then I wanted to finish on a very, very clear commitment to make sure that every single community across the West Midlands benefits. What I've learned over the last 4 years is that I've really, really cherished understanding more about the Muslim community. I used the word random earlier on. My engagement with mosques has been a bit random. There's been quite a lot of it, but it's not been particularly well structured, if I'm honest. We can do better there. So I've got a clear commitment in my manifesto to what we're calling an equalities task force, to really get to grips that why it is that some communities still have less opportunity. And if we call it out directly for what it is, the Bangladeshi and the Pakistani community still have much higher rates of unemployment than other areas. So there's a commitment to work on those issues. And there's a particular commitment within that to work on a structured engagement plan with mosques to make sure that the leadership of the Muslim community are being able to influence our planning in a way in which I accept we've not done in as orderly a way as we should have done. And within that, there's also a commitment to address the issues around housing and around health inequalities that I've acknowledged very honestly was certainly revealed by the pandemic. And we've done our report. We call it the Health of the Region report. It's 100% honest. Far more honest than any national report about the challenges that there are. And it talks about the actions that have got to be taken to address those inequalities. And personally, I think whoever is elected mayor, they have got to lean into that because it's so, so stark. But I give you my word today that I will certainly be making sure we deliver on those commitments that are there in that, I think, groundbreaking report that we have done. So hopefully, Nazma, that gives you an overview of how I'm thinking about everything. And I'd be very happy now to take any questions and get stuck into some of the issues for your friends and community.
Lovely. Andy, thank you very much for that quick introduction and sum up of some of your understanding about issues that are affecting the community, in particular, obviously, as the audience today, the Muslim community, the BME community. And as you rightly pointed out, the community suffers from a lot of issues. They live in the most deprived areas in the West Midlands. The health inequality, racism, Islamophobia, high unemployment amongst the youth, low academic attainment, and so forth. These are all issues that really does not allow the community to progress and has actually been stifling the community from moving forward in life, in work, and in choices that they can actually make. And all the questions that they will be asking you today covers those areas, which in the past has been well documented. And as you rightly said, the recent report, which your department endorsed, highlights those with facts and figures, which are very, very important. Just before we move on to the question, just to inform everybody, this program is being recorded. It's not being shown live on air. It's going to be recorded so that all the other organizations who haven't been able to participate today, they'll get a copy of that, and then they may choose to put it on their own websites and so forth to inform their congregation, inform their members and others, so that people do know and do understand the discussion that took place today, and also the thoughts and comments from Andy as well. Okay, so moving on to our first question then. So we've got Medina Mullah. Medina, if you want to ask your first question that you've got, so if you fire away.
Okay. Over the last couple of years, Muslim parents and pupils have witnessed serious concerns at schools from Trojan horse scandal, Anderton Park school incidents, and other similar incidents where Muslim religious beliefs, values, and sentiments have been mocked and discarded. How will you ensure such incidents are not repeated?
Yeah, it's an extremely good question. Thank you very much for asking it. And I think I would ask you to examine what type of person I am in answering this question, actually, because I'm going to give you my view, and I'm then going to ask you to think, does he mean it? Is he really like this? Because I think behind all of this debate is, can you trust the person who's sitting in front of you with these answers? So I'm sort of inviting you to make your judgment on that, if I'm honest. So I'm very clear about this, that at the heart of British values, which of course are taught in all schools, is the fact that freedom of speech should exist for everybody. And where freedom of speech is violated, I will always stand up to defend the right of people to have that freedom of speech. And when there have been attacks, for example, on a number of religious institutions across the West Midlands, I've been very quick to be there and to condemn them. But with that freedom of speech goes something else. There has to be a respect in how you address other faiths as well. And where we've gone wrong is when people think they have free rein to mock or to disrespect faiths. And we see that, of course, with the mockery of the Prophet Muhammad and the story we've just had from Batley in Yorkshire. So I am absolutely clear that anyone carrying out education respects that freedom of speech, but also demands respect from any faith or any individual towards another faith. And if that is not being respected in the classroom, then the head teacher, the governing bodies, whoever should clamp down very firmly upon that. So my own, I think my own beliefs around this and the way I've tried to conduct myself over the last 4 years would, I hope, give you confidence that that is exactly what I believe and what I would do. So, as I said, whenever there's been intolerance, I've been very, very quick to stand up and be counted and say that is not something that should be going on here in the West Midlands.
Andy, thank you very much for that very refreshing outline with regards to how you view things. I think for the Muslim community, it's basically to say that every cultural communities have the right to practice their own views, cultures, and beliefs. And what mustn't happen is one community forcing it down the throat of another community, and that's completely wrong. And exactly, we're living in a multinational, multicultural, multi-religious community. It's important for people to respect each other, and learn, more importantly, to work with each other, understanding our sensitivities. Every community has different sensitivities, and it's actually respecting those and knowing, how we can actually work together as a communities of community will allow us to progress. So it was really nice to hear you and your thoughts on that. Moving on.
Just let me say one other thing about this, Nazmi, because I think this is such an important question about how this city and region develops. What I have found is, as you've just described, is exactly the view of almost every faith leader in the region. And you'll probably know that one of the very first things I did was pull together a big convention of faith leaders at Birmingham University. And what was so refreshing to me there was actually that principle that you've just described could have come out of the mouths of any faith leader. And what I find really encouraging is when one faith is attacked verbally, not physically, it is usually other faith leaders who manage to find the most effective support for them. So I genuinely think that is well established amongst all faith leaders, that it's when it's infringed, we need to defend that principle.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Moving on to our next question, if I could ask Rubina Begum from Mend.
Lovely.
Hi, Andy. And just really quickly, I've just asked all the participants just to put the organizational initials, just so we know who's from where, if they forget to say which organization they're from. So if everyone can do that, that would be great. So as you know, I'm from Mend. So the question I have is related to more around the hate crime incidents and attacks that have been happening locally. So it's well documented that hatred and attacks against Muslims has significantly increased over the years. And obviously within the COVID pandemic, as you've seen yourself online as well as offline. How will you commit, or will you commit in setting up a body to include Muslim organizations, representatives, to review the support provided to Muslim victims and improve action against perpetrators?
So thank you for the notice of your question, because you will understand me saying I wanted to speak to my colleague who is standing for the Police and Crime Commissioner role in terms of making sure I gave you a full answer to this, because as you will know, a lot of this falls within the remit of the Police and Crime Commissioner, not just the Mayor. And I'm very happy to answer your question very positively. Again, I'd ask you to look at what I have already done myself, where I can influence this. So I do have responsibility for crime on public transport. And out of the faith conference that I referred to at Birmingham University back in 2017, we set up very quickly, guided by Abdullah Rahman, actually, of the Bahu Trust in Birmingham, a hate crime campaign on public transport. And I'm pleased to say, in inverted commas, that campaign led to a 30% increase in reporting. I say I'm pleased because it's much better that these things are out than left in and festering and people suffer in silence. And we did also, within that, work, of course, with, across different faiths, organisations where there would be safe reporting, and Tel Mama was the Muslim organisation we work with. Now, I'm well aware there are other organisations, we could broaden that out, but at least hopefully people would say he did what he said he was going to do on crime on transport around hate crime. And having talked to Jay Singh Sohal, who is my running mate for the role of Police and Crime Commissioner, he and I have agreed that I should say to you that yes, we would be very keen to develop a full region-wide hate crime campaign, and that will include such activities of safe space counselling with Muslim organisations to help the the victims. And of course, very rapid reporting, again, using Muslim organisations to draw that reporting out as quickly as possible. So in essence, the answer to your question is yes, we'd want to work with you on what was the most effective way of doing what I think we both agree has to be done, sad as it is that it's necessary.
Thank you, Andy, for that. Andy, just with that, we've also been liaising with the other PCC candidate to have a get-together with both PCC candidates from the Labour Party and the Conservative Party.
Oh, yeah.
Would you be able to talk to Jason Sowell to see if he can give me some date and time that's convenient for him to sit down with the community and with Simon?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course I will. Let me make a note of that right away.
He has confirmed that he's able and willing as soon as he...
Sure he will be. Yeah.
Jason, we have that session, because there are a lot of crime, hatred, community concerns around community safety that people would like to pose to both those candidates. So if you can, if you can get back to me, that'd be appreciated. Okay, so next question will be asked by Bashir Haq from the Jami Mosque Islamic Centre, one of the oldest mosque in the West Midlands, with over 1,000 people every week coming along for the prayers, and we're seeing over 100,000 footfall over the year. So Bashir, over to you.
Yes, hi Andy. What I'd like to ask is, many mosques closed voluntarily during the COVID virus when it first came about. Mosques are run entirely on donations by worshippers. As a result, many mosques are now facing significant financial difficulties due to not being able to collect donations. Mosques also did not receive any financial grants like businesses. Will you commit to looking at offering mosques that are financially struggling to stay open some financial support?
So yeah, thank you, A, for what you do. And it does give me the opportunity, actually, then we'll get straight to your question, just to say a very big thank you for the incredibly responsible approach that I'm sure every mosque representative on the call took to collective worship and the risks there. So thank you for what you did to act on that. So I was troubled by your question, because what we did actually, when the closures first occurred early part of later spring, early summer last year, was we had on the faith calls that I've been doing throughout the pandemic, a briefing on financial support for all places of worship. And there were a number of sources of funding that we talked about stepping in for all places of worship. So the National Lottery Community Fund, the National Emergencies Trust, and of course there was the 750 million of money from government direct to community groups as well. And I know that some religious institutions receive money from that. So being very straight with you, I can't commit to the WMCA stepping in and doing the funding. We do not have that resource. But what we tried to do was help put you in touch with the right places where there would be support. And I would be very happy to do that again and follow up with my team why you've thus far not been able to get support, because I did believe that there were a number of sources of potential funding to deal with the situation that you described. So if you would like, I'm more than happy to get that followed up directly, but I can't say we will step in. And you will understand that all those things I talked about were national organisations where frankly the pockets are much deeper than our local situation. But I'm very willing to follow that up with you one-to-one.
Yeah, I mean, just on that one, obviously, and we appreciate a lot of the mosques are not registered as charities. There's no legal obligation for them to do so. Charities are fine. We did benefit from local government funding, which is very useful. But a lot of the mosques up and down the country, across West Midlands, haven't been able to access any of those funds. Now, local authorities have a discretionary fund. Yes. Their discretion to give, as the name suggests, which the government has given. Given the fact that all the mosques that we are involved in this group, in particular, but all the other mosques up and down West Midlands as well, have been doing a stupendous amount of work during the lockdown and supporting all people of all faiths with food parcels, with deliveries to home, advising them with vaccination and so forth. I think there needs to be some recognition from local authority about the essential role they have played and they will continue to play. And local authority need to be, I think, a bit more persuaded to say how are they actually supporting the thousands of mosques that there are in West Midlands that have continued to provide essential services during the time of lockdown?
We will, Nazma, we will follow up. Nazma, we will follow up exactly how we can act on this for you, because, as I say, this was a very, very current issue. I'll say 9 months ago, and I'd be very interested to follow through with you exactly what has happened, because your point about the local authorities is right, but there could be other sources as well. So I will make sure one of my team contacts you directly and can be put in touch with the Jami Mosque leadership over this. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our next question is Shaz Akhtar. She's the Vice Chairman for the Black Country Stand Up to Racism. So Shaz, your question?
Hiya there, Andy. Apologies about before. My my audio wasn't working.
We can hear you now.
Yeah, lovely to have you in our presence today. So thank you. You have touched on my question a bit in your intro, actually, but I am going to repeat it because I've got a different angle to it. So the COVID-19 has hit the Muslim community bodies, as you mentioned, with the Black, Asian and Arab people suffering disproportionately from increased risks and high mortality. Now, this has highlighted the health inequalities. Sorry, my phone's gone. I've got it on my phone.
I've got him to get other people to ask them.
Yeah. Nazmal hasn't got no ego.
Yeah, okay. Shaz, are you okay?
Is faced by Muslims. So will you commit to work with relevant bodies to put in place an action plan to address all the health inequalities faced by Muslims and other ethnic minority groups?
So thank you for asking a question again, because I think it's a really important thing to draw out. The answer is one word: yes, and the evidence is already there. I'll just tell you the story of this, that you will remember. Time flies by, doesn't it? But I want to say something like last July, the government brought out their own.
Beforehand.
Disappeared again. I'll carry on. The government brought out their own report about health inequalities. And if I'm honest, I thought it trimmed a bit. So I thought, no, we are going to do something that's 100% honest. And you will no doubt have seen that now from your question, our Health of the Region report. And it was 100% honest. It was deeply uncomfortable. Talked about the different death rates in different communities, but it asked the question of why. What were the things that lay behind these? And therefore, it then got actions to address these issues. So the differential levels of screening from preventable health diseases are there. The issues around differential levels of impacts of mental health were there. So we've now got our first suggested actions, and the job of the mayor, as I say, is to make sure that the different organisations drive them forward. And there's a critical thing in that. Some of them are not delivered by the WMCA, but they might be delivered by the NHS. Some might be delivered by a local authority, some might be delivered by national government, but the role of the mayor is to hold other people accountable for delivering their part of it. And that is exactly what I intend to do. So I can give you a categoric yes answer to your question.
All right, thank you for that, Andy. Because again, as Andy mentioned earlier on, the report that the West Midlands Combined Authority endorsed highlighted all of these health inequalities. And the key thing now is to set up an action plan, which Andy has actually given his word that he will ensure an appropriate action plan and resources are put forward, and working in partnership with all the different providers to look at addressing these issues. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Moving on to our next question, I have Hamda from MAB Youth. So Hamda, if you want to put your question forward to Andy.
Hi, Andy. It's very refreshing to hear a candidate speak so finely as yourself. My question is, Muslim people are living in some of the most overcrowded housing and in the most deprived areas. Will you be committing to creating a strategy and plan that addresses this concern?
So, Hamda, thank you for your question. It's another very, very important one. So I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to be honest and explain that this is going to be very challenging and it's going to take time because a number of things have got to come together. So let's just talk it through. So when I talked about the Equalities Task Force in my introduction, and it's all in the manifesto, I'm not just saying it on the screen today, it's all their firm commitment. And again, I'd ask you to judge me by the past. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. That's what you learn in business, frankly. That task force, this issue of jobs and housing, or the two issues of jobs and housing, will be right at the heart of that, because what you described is accurate. Now, the housing answer is, of course, that truth is we have got a chronic shortage of the right type of homes across the West Midlands, and that's taken decades, generations to bring about. And what we've started to do is accelerate the pace of new home building. And let's be clear, that's new homes of all types. So yes, it's family homes, 3 or 4 bedrooms, some of which, by the way, can be very imaginative, quite tight constructions. I was just looking in the B5 development down on the Persia Road today. Really interesting how they're being done there. Some of which are first-time buyer apartments, very reachable in that sense, and some of which, of course, needs to be housing association properties for rent. So, but we did increase our house building. We doubled it over the 6 years between 2014 and 2020, and our commitment is to continue to do that. So the long-term answer about improving the choice of homes is there for that. That has to go hand in glove, though, with the work to make sure that members of your community are getting better qualifications and access to better jobs. So that again takes a number of things, easy to say, because you've got to actually have a vibrant economy creating the jobs in the first place. And then you've also got to really work with the community on what skills are they getting that's going to be right for those jobs. And again, we're prepared to be very targeted in this. So if I just said to you, of our adult education budget, which is so critical to the retraining, over 2/3 of that has gone on members of the BME community. That is, in a sense, quite head-turning, but it's absolutely deliberate because we know that's where we've got more progress to make in terms of skill development. So I hope, again, there is evidence behind my commitment to work on this through this new task force.
That's great, Andy. And also, as you know, in the past, local authorities have been stifled from building.
Yes,
housing is taken away from local government. And this is something that you can actually lobby central government to provide that support to local authorities to have, a social housing program, especially in areas where it's most needed. And there are obviously other programs like self-build as well. And ourselves, Community Foundation, we've recently been in discussion in looking at how do we support people who are trying to get into the housing ladder. So we're setting up a cooperative, and we're actually in touch with West Midlands Homes to discuss how they can support us establish such a body to allow people to move into owning their own houses. Because as you know, there are a lot of properties, not just social housing properties that people can move into, but again, due to financial difficulties, getting a mortgage and the limitation of all of that is very real. So what we're looking at is an alternative way. And there are other ideas like that. And
there are. Yeah.
Review all options to look at how do we move people to acquire their own properties, either as rented tenants or as outright owners over time. Okay, thank you for that, Andy. But like I said, certainly
let me just mention one thing, Osmal, as you prompted me. Affordable housing rather than social housing. We've already made good progress, doubled the number over the last 5 years. Social housing, being very straight, there's a lot more we need to do, working with our housing associations and indeed local authorities. And there's a clear commitment in the manifesto to do that and get further funding in from government to enable that. But the reason I particularly interrupted you, my apologies, is that, again, you say you've got an innovative scheme, brilliant scheme that we've just launched, and we're doing it in Wolverhampton first, actually. It's a scheme called Help to Own. It's the same sort of idea that you eventually convert your rental into deposits for purchase. So, yeah, I want to strongly support what you've said about we're going to need to back these innovative schemes, just as you say. So, yeah, we should work together on that.
Definitely. And the model's first been actually developed in Leeds. So there's one organisation which the national body that we supported, the cooperative body, are supporting, and they're working with us to support us to build a model here in the West Midlands. But yeah, we're happy to chat. Brilliant. Moving on swiftly to now Katarzyna from the Muslim Student House. So Katarzyna, your question, please.
Hello, Andy. I would like to point out that Muslims face serious discrimination and limited employment opportunities. Our youth have the highest unemployment rate in the region. So my question is, What have you done to date, and how do you seek to address youth unemployment amongst Muslim youths?
Yes, thank you, Katerina. You're right, and I acknowledged in my introductory remarks that certain nationalities within the Muslim community have particularly high unemployment rates. And it's the Pakistani and the Bangladeshi communities that have a much higher rate, for example, than Indian Muslims. So there is definitely an issue to be addressed there. So what have we already done? I said that pre-pandemic, the region's economy was performing well, and actually there were 97,000 additional jobs. And I said that our adult education budget was particularly focused on members of the BME community. But let's be far more specific. So for youth unemployment, you're absolutely right. This is an enormous challenge to us on the back of the pandemic. The actual number is 41,000 young people claiming benefits. So it's very significant. And in my jobs plan, we talk about how we're going to address this head on. So we talk, obviously, first. So the first thing is about making the most of the government schemes that are available in the West Midlands. And the best one there is, of course, the Kickstart scheme, which is looking to take 20,000 young people in the West Midlands into that first work experience. And we're about 7,000 vacancies or opportunities already. So that is alive and well. And if you were talking to anyone, I would definitely say to them, go see what Kickstart opportunity there is, because the idea is it doesn't just last for a short period of time, it then gets you into full-time work going forward. The next thing I would say, and this isn't a government scheme, this is a local arrangement, is it's about getting the right training to then move into a full-time job. And there's something that we're very pleased to work with our FE colleges on, that we're calling, and this isn't very clever marketing, the sector-based work academies. And the idea of that, and there's about 10,000 roles over the next 2 years here. So again, a really meaty thing, that with our colleges, we train for particularly the growth sectors of our economy. And I'll give you a brilliant example of the work we're doing with Wolverhampton, actually around training people to be mechanics for new electric vehicles. 720 new roles there. Lovely to talk to the first men and women going into that, a really innovative idea. And similarly, whether it be in construction, digital, healthcare, all of those. And there's a whole sort of brochure available from our colleges that we've put together with them through the combined authority. And then the other thing I would call out is what we're doing as the national pilot for the national retraining schemes. So some sectors are still really booming. The digital sector, for example, and we have what we call our boot camps. There, and we've got about £6.5 million to focus on this, and its programme is relatively short again, but to get people the basic skills in digital. And the wonderful thing is, over 3/4 of people who've gone through that have gone into a really good long-term job at the end of it, because it's still a growing sector. So what we can do is we can help people set themselves for that job to address that youth unemployment. And then the last thing I would say about it is all of the bits of this offer, some things I've said here and more, are pulled together on what we call our youth platform. And I'd say to any young person, if they want to go onto the WMCA website, look up youth platform, Birmingham, Sandwell, Solihull, Walsall, whatever, it pulls all the information and advice into one place, including the Department of Work and Pensions youth coaches. So it's a sort of one-stop shop to set you up for success. So your question is spot on, huge challenge, but I hope what comes out is we've really worked to try to put a plan in place to address this.
As you know, and
thank you very much.
The population West Midlands is very high, particularly amongst the BME community, and the unemployment rate is significantly high. And some of the schemes that you mentioned are well and good. The Kickstart program, I mean, we from our Community Foundation, we applied directly. Got rejected by the central department in the government dealing with this, but we're actually partnering with Sandwell Council now to run the Kickstart program here. I think the key thing for you is to get some feedback on numbers, and once you're able to do so, is what percentage of Kickstart program are running in the West Midlands, because it needs to be proportional to the number of young people present.
Yeah,
I would assume. The other one is also to talk to colleagues in Birmingham Council. Birmingham 2 years ago, for 5 years, ran a Birmingham Job Fund, which was an incredible program to support young people, 6 months paid salary, and then for them to do a training program lasting another 6 months, 12 months basically to get a qualification, job, and the experience and a paid salary. Unfortunately, they had to see that particular program due to lack of funding. But these programs work very effectively. I mean, from my organization alone, we had over 50 people that we employed over the 5 years, trained them up, and gave them an NVQ level 3. So it's definitely worth you looking into.
Yeah, it's good. Your point about the data on Kickstart is absolutely right. I was talking to the minister who's ultimately responsible for this only 2 weeks ago, saying we're not on our own on this. They are just not supplying us the data about the level of success, actually. And it's a problem because you can't attune it when you don't have that. But I do think my 7,000 number is literally right up to date. And we're seeing we're meeting increasingly lots of employers who are actually getting on and doing this. And as you say, working with partner organizations, but everything you say is very fair on that.
Great. Okay, moving on to our next question. This is a question by Farid Mia. He's the president of the Midland Muslim Society. It's the largest paid membership Muslim organization in the West Midlands. And they actually have branches operating across all of the 7 areas. So a very, very influential organization. Farid, over to you for your question.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Nazmul. My question to Mr. Andy is that there are many Muslim charities and organizations who are working to improve education, employment, and community cohesion. How will you work and engage with these organizations to support them continue this much needed work?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, really good. So by nature, I am a huge believer that, that thing called the third sector that we always talk about, the voluntary sector, charitable sector, social enterprises, has got a huge role to play in delivery action. If I look at a lot of the successes we've had across the region, often a charitable organisation, a third sector organisation is the heart of them. If I think of all the work we've done on homelessness and how that's been pretty much led by the charitable sector, actually. So I get that. So this comes again to what the commitment is in the manifesto, that we need to put in place a proper structure through the Faith Strategic Partnership. That's what we've set up. There are 3 Muslim members on that Faith Strategic Partnership, and I would expect them to connect us through to the Muslim charitable organisations in a way so we can get, the key word is connect, to make sure that you can contribute to the strategic goals that we've got. Because we have good relations with Muslim Aid, Islamic Relief, a number of the trusts that we've talked about earlier on, but I accept that it needs more planfulness, frankly, to get that connectivity there. So that's why I said right in my introductory remarks, it's about getting that structure in place, and the way to do it is through that Faith Strategic Partnership, because they can then connect into the charitable sector. Does that seem, but I'm also, by the way, I'm also up for your advice as to how to do it. I don't sit here saying I've got a monopoly of good ideas. So if you think there's a different, better way of doing it, then please, I'd be very keen to hear, actually.
Yeah. I mean, one way we can actually take an audit of all the organisation. I know some of the Voluntary Service Council have actually started thinking about that, but no one's actually done that. West Midlands, there are so many first sector organisations. It'd be useful to map them to see where they're based and what services they provide, and then see the gaps. But there's also duplication, unfortunately. So we can actually better use the resources. What we don't have is a West Midlands Voluntary Services Council. And from my organisation, we're looking at setting up one for the BME community. But with your help, Andy, one of the things that we can actually be working on is a third sector Voluntary Sector Council for the whole of West Midlands. And that's very much needed to coordinate a better third sector response. So I'm happy to work with you on that.
Yeah, okay, good point. Thank you.
Moving on to our next question is Shahidul Islam. He's the president of Birmingham South MMS, and also another key organisation working in grassroots community in the Small Heath and surrounding area. Shahidul.
Good afternoon, Andy and Nazmul. I hope everybody is well. I've got a question for him. Muslims are underrepresented in position of leadership and employment in Syria.
So you cut off Shahidul. Hello. Shahidul, can you hear me? Okay, we'll come back to Shahidul in a second then, as soon as he fixes his microphone. Moving over to Gulam then. Gulam from Walsall. Gulam, if you want to ask your question now.
Yeah, Thank you, Nazmul. Andy, as you're well aware, Muslims play quite a key role in the economy of West Midlands, and they're by owning and running a variety of small and micro-sized enterprises, specifically in the areas of retail and hospitality, like restaurants. The pandemic has hit those businesses pretty hard, as you can imagine. And we know there's been some support available for them, but, moving on from the lockdown, what kind of support will you sort of be advocating or providing as the West Midlands Mayor? So that's my question around that.
It's a really good question, this, and very incredibly topical, given that hopefully you may be reopening on Monday, depending exactly what sector you're in. And again, I'd say, let's look at the record here and whether I get this. So, as everybody knows, I'm standing as the Conservative candidate, but sometimes, you know what, your own government doesn't get it right. And I was very happy end of last year when we went into the tiering situation and the government was not putting sufficient cash on the table to support our retail and hospitality businesses to stand up and be counted and say, no, this isn't right. And some of you might have seen me on the 10 o'clock news making that very point. So I think I can say I have lobbied vociferously for the grants that have been made, the extension of business rates, holidays, the reduction in VAT for the hospitality sector, and actually the Chancellor of the Exchequer had the good grace, after I said my piece, to just a week later in the House of Commons, when he changed his support, increased it, to say that I had been vocal and effective and had influenced his decision. So there's sometimes as the mayor, you can step, and actually, particularly when you're the mayor of the same party of government, because they sort of don't expect you to oppose it. You can sometimes influence government policy there, really importantly. Second thing I would say is obviously really important that you are properly supported through this recovery phase, because as an ex-businessman myself, I get this. When you reopen, there are pressures on your cash flow, restocking, re-employing people. So again, I was very vociferous before the budget to make sure that the grants have a longer period on them. So, for example, the extension of business rates holiday that hopefully you will have had. Now, then going forward, there's another important thing we can do locally, and that's really get the message out there about we're open for business, getting confidence back in visiting town and city centres. So there will be a West Midlands wide open for business marketing campaign. And of course, one other very important thing we have to do is make sure the transport system, which so many customers of yours rely on, is clean, efficient, safe. And again, I think we've done a good job on that through the pandemic. Actually, it's run throughout in a very safe way. But again, we'll be making sure that that message really gets out there to give customers confidence in coming back to town centres in particular. So there's quite a few different bits, but I hope what underlies all of that is my understanding of the sort of very practical cash flow issues that you're all facing right now.
And just to add on to that, when obviously the lockdown reopens and people are able to travel from abroad to the UK, what would be really useful is to promote, as the ambassador of West Midlands, as the mayor of West Midlands, the diversity of culture, the fusion of the curry houses, the Asian shops and the Arab shops and the African shops and all the other cultures that we have here. That is actually missing at the moment. We're not actually promoting our in West Midlands of different things that we offer. And tourists would love to sort of come to these areas, and rather than having to going to 10 different countries, they can actually come to one place and actually have all the cultures together.
Yeah, good point. And you're absolutely right, Nazmul. And by the way, it doesn't have to wait for international tourists. There's going to be a boom in UK tourism. And we all know that some of the areas with brilliant, I'll use this word in this case, South Asian high streets really have incredible incoming tourism. So I think that's a very good point, which we should pick up through the tourist board, frankly. Because we established a new West Midlands tourist board to do exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Andy, I'm just conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes. Yeah. Are you okay for another 10 minutes? Because there are people who are really...
10 minutes, yes, but so you know, I've then got to go and talk about Prince Philip on the radio. So 10 minutes, a minute longer. Yeah. But I do want to come back to the question that Shadul was going to ask. It's a very important question.
Shadul, are you okay to go with that now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Sorry, I did put my question, but unfortunately you guys didn't hear it. Okay, without delaying, I'm going to put my question to him, Andy. Good afternoon. Muslims are underrepresented in position of leadership and employment in senior roles in the public sector. What will you do to address the gap? Thank you very much, Mr. Andy.
Yeah, Shardul, thank you for your question, because it's very important, this. Again, we've already taken some steps, but frankly, they've not been effective enough, and we need to do more. So when I was first elected mayor, or perhaps we set up what we called the Leadership Commission. And what this commission was there to do was to explain why it is that the leadership of the region, just as you say, does not represent or is not representative of the region that it serves. Because there are insufficient members of your community, members of the Black community, members actually of, if I'm honest about it, the white working class communities as well, in the positions of leadership across the region. So, and that piece of work was done very professionally, and we had a number of recommendations on the back of it, which we've been busy getting on with. So, for example, the setting up of the Young Combined Authority, which brings brilliant young people, fully representative of the region, into the room when the main decisions are taken. That's a good example of what's been done. We've had business pledges as well, but it's not done enough. So what we're now doing specifically on what you ask about, Shardul, is that commission is coming together again with a whole program of getting people who've got talent and potential ready for board roles, whether they be in the public sector or whether they be in the private sector, to your point about businesses. Because I am a firm believer that the best organisations are those that have genuine diversity of thinking in the room when the decisions are being taken at senior level. And we weren't doing that. So this is to say to whichever public organisation, you've got a space coming up for a board member, we will get you people who are from different communities who are ready and capable to do that, and work actively coaching, preparing those people for that board application, to try to be interventionists, to try to tilt the scales away from where they are currently positioned, Shardul. And I'm very pleased that we are committed to doing that work, actually.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, so we're just coming to, let's just go through.
Can I ask a question? You know, I've been sitting here patiently for 1 hour. I want to ask a question.
Right.
Please.
Okay, we've got an order of questions. But I
know you got an order of question, but you know, you got to give a opportunity to all the participants.
Yeah, okay, I'll allow you to make a quick question then, Andy.
Yeah. Andy, my question is this. You know, I've been living here for last 55 years, and I face racism every day from every institution of this country. But now this racism has gone a bit further, and now I face Islamic phobia sort of racism. As you see, these cartoons are, you know, insult to my religious belief. And the man who drove cartoon from Denmark and France, they were all, you know, racial motivated people. So my question is this, that, you know, there is no law that protects me, you know, from a racial abuse. I'm a citizen of this country, lawfully living in this country, and it doesn't protect insult to what I believe. So would you be able to support, not only support, but also ask, you know, Conservative Member of Parliaments to have a law on the statute book that protects my, you know, my race. I didn't choose. I was born, you know, this my color. If somebody doesn't like my color, that's his problem, not my problem. My faith is very important to me. You know, that faith must be protected from insult, like the cartoons, the way they insult. And it's all racial motivated. And, you know, racism leads to what happened in Germany, you know, in annihilation of, you know, race. So I think...
Of course. So let me give you a very straightforward answer to your question. There is law, and the law must be implemented. There is absolutely no place in Britain for any racism or any action against people on their grounds of their faith or their ethnicity, or lots of other protected characteristics actually as well. But So there is absolutely law to protect your community. And if you see people who are acting in an Islamophobic way, the full force of the law must be used against them. Absolutely categoric, I can give you that reassurance. Now, you talk about MPs. I'm very pleased that West Midlands now has a Muslim Conservative MP. We needed him, and that's Saqib Bhatti for Meriden, who is a very proud Muslim. So he can certainly be making sure that the law is enforced in exactly the way in which it should be. And going right back to the very first question, I was very, very clear that respect for your religious leaders was definitely, in my mind, part of what is required. I mean, I called that out unprompted right at the beginning of the hour's conversation. And you should be fully protected by the law. The issue is whether or not acts of racism are properly drawn attention to, and then we have the appropriate legal follow-up to them. But to reassure you, that protection absolutely should be there, as it is for any other group.
Yeah, so Suleiman, so these are the questions that we're going to be asking the PCC candidates at a later date. And you're very right, these are important things which we definitely need to look at in terms of support to victims, and also looking at how they work with the different communities to advocate for their needs and so forth. So Andy, thank you for clarifying on that. Moving swiftly on then, Dr. Mohammed Hanif, Chairman of Al-Hijra Trust and also a trustee of Central Mosque.
Good afternoon. Andy, my question is about representative democracy, and you mentioned the Muslim MP there. Can you reassure us that if elected, you will commit your party to ensuring that candidates are representative of the area in which they're standing, especially in those who are standing in high Muslim population areas?
Yes is the answer, but there's a little but about the challenge to it, actually, because the greatest irony, of course, is that Saqib is representing probably one of the areas of the West Midlands that has the lowest concentration of Muslim community. But in a sense, I think that is to be hugely applauded, that the members of the party in Meriden enthusiastically adopted a member of the Muslim community as their prospective parliamentary candidate, as it works. So I think this is a really important question for the future of all parties. And it's linked to the question about that was asked, Shahula asked about the leadership representing the community. So whether it be, frankly, in the NHS, in politics, in business, in local government, everything, we should have that representation. My party has not achieved that everywhere recently. Made good progress recently. So if you look at the benches of the Conservative Party in government, there are many more members of different communities there than they used to be, a homogenous lot, and did not represent the communities. I accept that, but we have made progress. We've also made progress in some of our local council groups across the West Midlands. I would call out Walsall as the best example, where we have Muslim, Sikh. I don't think we have any Hindu councillors, but lots of Hindu supporters. We've got progress in Wolverhampton, which is good. And we've made, I'll be straight with you, we've not made enough progress in Birmingham, actually. And so the bit of the question that I know is going to be slightly challenging to us is to make sure we have Conservative councillors in the areas where there are strong Muslim communities at the moment, because that doesn't tend to have been the way they voted. So asking for me to sort that one out might be a little challenging, but the principle behind your question, absolutely. And just let me tell you one thing I did personally to try to get this moving fast. We had a wonderful event with the chairman of the Conservative Party, who's ultimately responsible for all of the selections, to actually where potential candidates from different minority communities came forward to meet him, to actually be reassured about the opportunities there are for them as serving members of the Conservative Party. And I put that event on for hundreds of people in Birmingham a couple of years ago. What we've also done in the Combined Authority, actually, is cross-party run campaigns to help members of minority communities come forward to stand for council, because it is often a question of uncertainty about what's required. So we've done lots of things. So I can answer yes, but your particular bit, can I get Conservative councillors to represent the areas of most Muslim voters? That's going to prove a little bit more tricky.
Take two quick questions. So the next question from Dr. Mohammed Saad. He's got a question around transport. So, Dr. Saad, if you want to pose your question, Andy.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'd like to ask a question regarding your responsibility for transportation in West Midlands.
Yeah.
And what's your plan for the bus services and the key route network, which needs a lot of improvement in some areas?
For the bus service in something network, I just didn't catch what you said.
What was it the train network?
The transportation, the key route network.
Key routes, so the key routes.
Yeah.
Network. Okay.
Yeah.
Great question. So buses first. So we've made a bit of a breakthrough on buses in the West Midlands. For 40 years, what happened? Less people used them, the fares went up, the service deteriorated. It's a vicious circle of decline. As soon as I became mayor, I sat down with the chief exec of National Express who runs it, and I said, we've got to stop this. You know, we can see where this is heading. And what's happened? We've reversed that circle. We've now got increasing usage pre-pandemic. 2019, 8 million more bus journeys were taken across the West Midlands. As a result of that, National Express have frozen their fares for 4 years now, sorry, my apologies. Literally no increase at all. In some areas, we've got low fare zones like Walsall, Sandwell, and we've also got capping. If you pay with your card, you have a fare capped. So actually people are paying less to use the bus. So there's more people, fares capped, and National Express is investing hundreds of £millions in the quality of the vehicles, like we're seeing green electric buses, hydrogen buses are just about to start coming. And we've got a clear commitment in Coventry. We've just won the competition for the all-electric city. Every single bus in Coventry will become an electric bus over the next couple of years. Scoop the pot nationally. That's why the Prime Minister came to visit Coventry Bus Garage just a few weeks ago. And what we're also doing, we're linking that to key route networks and some of the main arterial routes. And it's why there's a fair bit of roadworks at the moment. So Walsall Road, Coventry Road, Moseley Road, we're investing in all the sort of bus priority sort of changes to the road structures and patterns to actually speed our vehicles through. And we're spending at least 120 million just on the roads out of Birmingham doing that at the moment, including the first cross-city route, linking the 50 to the 82 along the Dudley Road, another main arterial road. So actually, I would put it to you that after years of decline, I've begun to sort this out by working with the bus industry and bringing in literally hundreds of millions of pounds of investment to deal with this.
Great, thanks, Andy. Just the last and final question from University of Birmingham, ISOC. Abu.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah. I'll make this quite short because obviously I know you've got to run away. But as a student, I've seen the impact the last year has had on a lot of students' health, and universities have really, well, the university I go to at Birmingham has really failed to take action. Do you have like any concrete plans on how to like increase accessibility for students to mental health services, etc.?
Yes, fascinating last question. We haven't done a scheme particularly for students, but the combined authority that I lead has stepped into the mental health issue in two ways, actually, helping people work with their mental health and those who have to work from home, a whole kit there. And then the second thing is about getting people with mental health conditions into work. And we've just received actually another 6 million from government to aim to take 1,500 mental health sufferers into work in the Black Country. The other thing we are absolutely committed to, and it's in the manifesto, is to do a new programme of mental health support for the BME communities. Because again, to this disproportionate impact, it is very clear that the mental health issues on the back of COVID are intense in the minority communities. And that's why we have a clear commitment and plan to act on that with making resources available with the Mental Health Trust. So it's not students, but there is a particular young people and minority community focus around a mental health work. But we haven't picked up the particular student aspect, to be straightforward with you.
Okay, Shaz, just want a quick yes or no from you, Andy. Go on, Shaz, I'll let you in.
Thank you so much, and hopefully this is the last one, Andy. I've heard so much people talk about institutional racism, structural racism within, whether that's housing deprivation, whether that's health inequalities, etc., etc. And something came to my mind, and it was with reference to the Sewell Racism Report. Can you really say, as a report does, that there isn't structural or institutional racism in this country?
Yeah, fascinating. What a last question. You said it was a simple one. It's huge. I'll give you my view on that report. I was surprised by it because the truth is the country's made huge progress. And I think compared to lots of countries in the world, we do have a proud record. So I don't disagree with any of that. But there are still enormous challenges. And I think if you think of what we've been talking about, what was in our own reports, I was very surprised that some of those similar things were not called out in that national report. So there you have my view. I was surprised by the conclusions of it.
Lovely. Andy, thank you ever so much. And all the other participants, in a very short notice, you came on board. So thank you very much for joining us. You've heard from Andy. He's given you short, blunt, to the point responses as an individual as to his views on our concerns and our questions. We've had a mayoral pledge document that we produced, and we passed it to Andy, and Andy had a look at that, and he's come back where basically we had a list of about 10 different pledges, and where he was able to confirm that he's elected as mayor for West Midlands for the next term, then he will fulfill those pledges that he's undertaken. And where those pledges he felt is just practically not feasible, he actually highlighted. So we recognised that he's not just trying to sway our votes. He's actually being very genuine with regards to saying, look, these are what I can deliver, and these are practically out of my reach. And we recognise that coming from Andy. So, and you've all heard him directly yourself. You've heard his views on certain matters which are sensitive. Some of the difficult questions he's answered, and he's given his narrative with regards to how he will progress those agendas and those concerns that we put forward to him. As you know, elections day is around the corner, 6th of May. You've heard from Andy on everything that Andy has to say. Andy, is there anything you want to say with regards to your departing words?
No, just a huge thank you once again for coming together for the conversation, and just perhaps a slightly cheeky comment. The reason I give you the answers as you've described is I'm very conscious I've actually got to act on them after May the 6th, so I don't want to say something that I can't then do, and that's also perhaps what you learn in business, so thank you.
And Andy's been in regular meetings with us over the last couple of weeks, regularly meeting myself and a few other community leaders to talk about our concerns and our aspirations, and he's been very supportive of that. So I'd like to once again thank Andy. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry that it's actually gone 15 minutes overboard, and also participants as well. Jazakumullah khairan for your time, inshallah ta'ala. And Ramadan Kareem Mubarak is coming around the corner. May Allah make it easy for everyone, and all the suffering and all the difficulties that we are seeing across the world, across West Midlands, across all of England and UK, and sad news about the passing of Prince Philip today as well. So it may be easy for everybody. So with that, I conclude. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Andy will be in touch.
I think that was a really great conversation. Brother Nazma Rabina, well done for setting that up. I think that was really good.
Good one. Okay.
Convinced me to vote for Andy, I don't know, but it was a good conversation.
Yeah. I mean, just so that you know, we're trying to get Liam to come on board as well. So hopefully, he's emailed me yesterday to say that he's looking at his diary to come back, and so we're looking at another meeting with Liam. He's the Labour candidate for the mayoral election. Obviously, Andy's the current mayor. He's Conservative, and he's got a good chance of being the mayor next time round. But so has Liam. We never know. Obviously, Conservatives are in power nationally, so there's a good chance that Andy's able to retain that. And the key thing for me is actually not supporting a party blindly. We need to support an individual that will fight our corner, that will ensure that our needs are being met as much as possible, and that's the key thing. And Liam, we have tried on several occasions for him to actually be originally supposed to be a joint meeting, but his team has just not got back, and then we had to collar him earlier this week, and he's actually said, he's looking into it. So inshallah, we'll probably have another session, and we'll definitely invite you all here to have a meeting with Liam, see what he says, and then make up your minds with regards to how we're going to go for that. But the key thing, what I wanted to say was for the Muslim community, we have to date been very poor in handling politics. Other communities, what they have been working with individuals, and they've been actually getting, if you look at the Sikh community have really benefited from Andy's support. And they supported Andy last time round, and they are really getting the support from Andy back now. Other communities have been doing the same, but the Muslim community, we have not been using our numbers. We have got great numbers, but we've not been using our numbers to get to these people and say, look, we've got numbers, we'll give you the votes, but you give us in return our issues that we want addressed, our concerns that we want addressed. As Brother Suleiman was saying very angrily, about racism and Islamophobia. It's coming from the Conservative Party, it's coming from the media, it's coming from others. We need somebody to work with who can actually say, okay, I recognize what you're saying. And this is something really good about Andy, that he recognizes that his own party are at fault on a few things and they could do better. And obviously, he as he mentioned in the beginning, he's not a politician, he's actually a businessman. And he's decided to join the Conservative Party because he felt that this is where he can actually do the most. And really, we, the Muslims, we really, out of all the different parties in the past, Conservative actually, to our values, are the closest. But over time, if you look at the other people that got involved in Conservative, they've taken a Conservative way from those family values that we have, from the other Adal and Bir values that we have. And that's been our loss. So there's still hope for us to get involved with anybody. I don't actually vote. I've never voted in my life except once. I can deliberately choose not to vote the candidates that are standing in my area, because that's another discussion. But we need to make sure that we have people in power who can deliver our agenda, who can meet our children's need in the future, and also our community's need, inshallah. So this is the time for us to actually get together and be a bit more articulate about how we use our numbers, inshallah ta'ala. So once again, Jazakumullah khairan for your time, and I will email you back as soon as we hear back from Liam with regards to the other session. So with that, I conclude. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.